Okay, so this one is on, I'm going to take the lead over here. This one's on relationships. So I want to say, I think in the area where this understanding has helped me the most, I think the single area is in my relationship with my wife. It's really unbelievable to know that your wife is not the cause of your feelings. You know, your wife, your spouse, your husband, your partner, whatever it is not the cause of your feelings. Now, a lot of times it looks that way. You know, it looks like, as we're saying throughout, it looks like something other than thought in the moment is causing your feelings. But if you attribute the way I think is like the more you attribute your experience to your wife or your husband or your partner or whatever it is, so the more you do that, the more you're living in misunderstanding, so the more chaotic it might be for you as the person, you know. So just an example of this is it happened the other day, right? There are hundreds of examples of this, but let's say me and my wife get into a squabble before we go to bed at night, you know. It's usually at night when we're tired or whatever it is, and I say, you know, Effie, she was here yesterday, you know, Effie, you know, you talk to your mom way too much, you know, it's enough, you know, you talk to her, why are you and your sister so close with each other? She's a bad influence on you, and, you know, or whatever else I conjure up, whatever's coming to me, and then she says, you know, well, what's your problem, you know, or whatever, you know, you should call your parents more often, and we get into this squabble. So the more I think she causes my feelings, the more I'm living in misunderstanding, thinking the outside world has the power to make me feel something, so the more I'm going to blame her, the more I react, the more sharper things that I may say. But what happens is knowing the truth of my experience, that it's always coming from thought in the moment, and I'm doing the best I could giving that thought in the moment that I have. So there's something about that allows us to fight and move on from it, you know, so we're not stuck in fighting all the time. So what would happen would be is that we get into a squabble before we go to bed, and then we'd fall asleep upset, and the next morning what would happen is if I thought she was the true cause of my feelings, I'd say, you know, Effie, we have to resolve this. you know, we have a problem here, you know, and the way you spoke to me yesterday was so disrespectful. It's unacceptable. We cannot have this here. And, you know, it's not the first time I brought it up, by the way. You know, I keep on telling you this, and you don't listen to me, right? But when you know, and then it goes, you know, we got to go speak to someone, you know? And then, but when you know that the sole cause of your experience, the sole cause of your feelings, the sole cause of everything is thought in the moment, so what happens is that we'll get into a squabble, we'll get into a fight, but the truth is so humbling, it's so great to know that it's not her fault. And if I'm bitter, even though I might yell, even though I might get upset or say things, at the end of the day, it's me. It's not her. You know, so instead of trying to go back and fix the relationship and get her to understand my way, or get her to see things, or we have to see things, and you need to agree with me, you know, all these things, understanding that it's thought in the moment, and that she's not responsible for my feelings. Simple things, you know, I would come home and I would say, you know, I'm hungry. You know, I work the whole day, well, she also works, mind you, but when you come home and you're hungry, you're not thinking that way, right? So I'm hungry, you know, there's not, well, why, and then she goes, well, why do you need 2 dinners? You know, you need the early dinner and the 10 o'clock at night dinner. Why do you need that? So then it occurred to me, if I'm upset about it, right? It's one, she's not the cause of my feelings, and then it occurred to me, I'm an adult. I could cook my own dinner. You know, if there's something not in the house, I could go to the supermarket and I could buy it. You know, but that only came to me, the reason why I'm not inclined to blame her is because the truth is she's got nothing to do with my feelings. You know, so it allows me to take responsibility for myself. It allows me to take responsibility for what I'd like to see happen. You know, so it's really, again, the single most area where this has been a gain to me is really in my relationships. You know, and across the board, not only with my wife, but with my mother. For years, we had a terrible relationship. I can't even remember the last time we fought with each other. I can't. You know, it was just She doesn't have to do with my feelings. She doesn't have to do with my experience. My experience of her is coming from me. It's coming from her, you know? And it's, at this point in my life, I feel humbled and blessed that I have good relationships with my family, with my friends, with my kids, and there's something to see. For years, it wasn't like that for me. And for years, you know, I struggled in these areas, but the more I understand that my experience is coming from thought of the moment, that I'm involved in my own experience, it's not just the world's coming at me and now I'm forlorn, you know? So the more I understand that, there's something about that that allows me to, you know, the byproduct, as everyone was saying, you know, is I can take more responsibility for myself. I can blame people less, and I could be free. You know, so if there's something that I want to see happen, I could do it. I don't have to wait for someone else to do it. But if I'm living in misunderstanding, if I'm thinking that someone else is supposed to make me happy or someone else is supposed to fulfill my needs, if I think that I'm reacting to the world as if it has power over me in that sense, so the more I react to the world like that, the more I'm going to suffer. You know, the more I'm going to fall prey and be victim of circumstance in that sense. Go for it.
Wow. It's so nice, Shaya, how you're talking about like how like really on the ground in real time, like exactly what's happening just by that shift. And your mother, just like saying that it changed overnight.
There's actually one moment where I saw it so clearly, and I don't think I fought with her since. It was a few years ago. I just saw it. She was yelling at me for something, you know? And I started yelling back, skipping the whole parts of the story, but she was yelling at me, I was yelling at her. It takes two to tango, right? And then I just saw it. Wait a minute. She doesn't have to do with my feelings. She doesn't have to do with it. It's got nothing to do with it, and she's got her own thing going on for her that I didn't cause. And I saw that, and the whole thing changed. It was amazing.
Yeah, those are the stories that like nobody really believes, and people don't understand unless you understand that they happen. But it's such a great example of the implications of that single fact and how it plays out. And it plays out it's a cascade of implications in our lives. Or, you know, as I was reading a quote from Rabbi Tversky, he says, this basic fact changes the way you deal with everything. Everything. I mean, that's a lot of stuff. And it's really true. So this talk is called Separate Realities, and to me, that's like in relationships, as you were saying, is one of the places where I think the most profound and fulfilling changes happen for people as a result of seeing this simple, singular way at which we work that excludes all of the ideas and all of the theories and all of the castles in the air that we've built about why we feel the way we do and what needs to happen to resolve feelings and what we need to do to feel better. And one of the things you said was so great is that just look at this one factor, and I want to recap a few factors I think just come to mind when we talk about this idea of relationships and separate realities. One factor is this notion that relationships need to be fixed. And now, if you probably polled everyone on the street, it would be really hard to find a person who could even understand the concept that maybe that's a made-up idea based on extrapolating the implications from the wrong non-facts. Like, if something happens, it has to be fixed. People have to be fixed. And then for only one person in a relationship, and this is what's so great, I think you probably see it in your work and I see it in my work, everybody has this assumption it takes two people. You know, it takes two to tango, right? It takes two people. So nothing could ever really happen in this relationship to make it better unless both of us are willing to change. And you see overnight, or in a second, like Shaya was talking about, that seeing this singular fact behind life, seeing this singular fact behind how human beings are experience generators moment to moment to moment, and then that plays out in front of us, you know, it has like an immediate writing effect. That resilience that's built into the paradigm, the resilience that is what the paradigm is based on. The paradigm is based on 1 second and the next second are not connected. 1 second and one thought and the next thought are not connected. There is singularity. There is singular event happening one at a time. And that those moments are not connected, then why do we need to fix something that's already been fixed by the system which created it? Now, and that understanding allows us to, like Shaya was talking about, by not innocently taking responsibility for things that we have no say in, which is another person, a circumstance, a behavior of theirs, something that's happening to us. We actually get to take responsibility for what is our business. And our business means that, oh, my emotional life is just happening, and it's happening independent of what's going on around me. And why is it that is so freeing for me? It's so freeing because I actually can take a little responsibility for kind of what I make of stuff, and take a little responsibility for, you know, making amends. It's really easy just to apologize and say, oh, I messed up, and we're back where we need to be. Because what happens is, when we go outside of this logic of how it works, that the illusion immediately creates this experience of our own ego. The division itself creates that experience of our own ego. And as it reveals itself, it's so easy to see it. And once we see it, we're back inside. We have righted ourselves. We've connected with that true north, that constant that's always there. And in that place, what to do and what to say to somebody, and what to do to course correct, and what to do to, you know, make amends or make the relationship better or make up for the stupid thing that I just did or said, it becomes so obvious. And you want to do it, you know, because if your ego's gone in that split second, then you really want to do stuff for people, because the love is just there, and everything is coming from that. And then in the next second, you know, you're back in it. How could you say that? You know, that hurt my feelings. Why can't you think like me? You know? Why is it that you didn't notice the garbage? You know, why is it that you didn't notice all of these things that I think you should be doing with your time? And the freedom of that is really invigorating. It really, I don't know what your experience is, but in my house, it just added this like electric energy that was just infectious. And I don't know if anybody else picks up on it, but I don't care, because I do. And you know, that just comes from this singular, it's like this singular diagnostic tool that we have, and we go, okay, so how does this idea that I just made up, how does it measure up? And it'll instantly tell us it does or it doesn't.
Wait, could you say that again?
Well, what I mean is this singular cause of our experience, right? It's a diagnostic tool, moment to moment. for where do I think my feeling is coming from. And if I get the answer wrong, it'll show me that. And if I get the answer right, it'll show me that. Do I think my feelings are coming from my husband? Do I think my feelings are coming from fairness? Do I think my feelings are coming from, these concepts of self-righteousness, of what's morally right and wrong? Independent of what the truth is. You see, do I think my feelings are coming from all of these complex concepts that I make up about relationships? Or do I own them? And owning them is humbling and it's energizing. Like, yeah, I can own this. Yeah, I got this one. And immediately what happens is that it's like that ego that we all have and we all feel in different moments, it shows up and, it really wants to fight and it really wants to be right. It immediately is deflated for an instant and then it shows right back up.
And sometimes we're lucky that it actually doesn't show up for a while.
Yeah, that's kind of lucky. And, and it's funny because the closer we are to people, though, it's like the more time we get to make stuff up. and so it looks even more like it's them. Like you meet somebody on the street and you're like, oh, I'm cool with you. But somebody you live with every day, your mind has got a lot more history in connecting these invisible dots that don't really exist. And we're human beings. We get so excited about connecting all these patterns and seeing what's happening, and oh, look, this happened, and this happened, this cause must be related to this effect. And we get so smart about it and so analytical. And then in 1 second, they all disappear. They reveal themselves for what they really are, which is an illogic. Illogic. It's illogic that these cool theories I made up are not the cause of what's going on in this relationship. I would love it if they were, because there's so much fun to make up. But they're not the cause. And then all of a sudden, I'm back in line with the truth. And the other thing that I just want to mention is there's a few things that I think to pull out of this that's so important implication for relationships is that our feeling states, our emotions, the kind of flavors of feeling that we live in moment to moment to moment, are not indicators at all of the quality of relationships. And that is amazing to take the pressure off of relationships, in my view. Because I can be totally right about where my experience is coming from in this moment. I can have any feeling state around it, good, bad, ugly, angry, happy, euphoric. And then I can be totally wrong about where I think my experience is coming from. And be in the same feeling. Like I can look at my spouse and I can think, oh my gosh, they're the greatest person in the world. The reason I love them so much is because how great they are. It looks like it's coming from them. And I'm filled with love. I mean, that's a nice feeling, but it's not true. I always say, like, I don't really know who I'm married to. I'm just married to my thinking about my husband. And most of the time, that's okay because I kind of like it, but that's not true all the time. But that's what we are. We're married to, the thinking that we live in moment to moment. So to take that off the plate as a real factor, like how do I feel moment to moment in this relationship? And if I feel pretty good, it's a good relationship. And if I feel pretty bad, it's a bad one. To completely eliminate that falsehood. Do you know how many marriages that could save? If people saw and I was talking about one little tiny glimpse into the implications of this source of our experience flowing through us moment to moment. And there are so many others. So the ideas that I just wanted to sum up here is about this seeing separate realities, seeing that people don't need to think like me, they can't think like me, and it would be really boring if they did. And therefore, we're interested to learn about other people's realities. They're fascinating, they're invigorating, they're wild. Like, I never know from one moment to the next what my husband's gonna think about something. And then when I hear it, I'm like, that's so interesting. I would have never thought of that. It's not a threat, it's an inevitability that two people don't think alike. And the personal responsibility that comes is so empowering. You know, taking responsibility for something that you actually have responsibility for is one of the most empowering things in the world. And then realizing that my moment-to-moment feeling states, my moment-to-moment emotions, are not an indicator of the quality of a relationship or the quality of my mental health.
Very nicely said.
Thank you, Shaya.
I really like what you were saying, like, for all we'll ever know is our thinking about a certain person or situation, you know, and as you were saying, like, I don't have a relationship with my spouse, I have a relationship with my thinking about my spouse, you know, and as that changes, my experience of her changes. So one day you come home and she looks like the devil, you know, another day you come home and she looks the most wonderful person, you know. Was it her? Or was it here? Right? What was it? It's the difference between night and day. You know? It's the world of difference. It's like even the other day, this past Friday, Erev Shabbos before the Sabbath, and it could be a little bit busy making preparations and things like that. And it's almost laughable. Like when you see it, it's almost like takes the wind out of you. I had to run out to the store and get something last minute, and I was really upset at my wife. And what happened was this: I like left the door, and I was like padding down the front door steps, going to the car, and then I'm like, I got to turn back in and tell her what's on my mind, you know. And I turned back around, and I'm looking at the door, and like a gust of wind came, started knocking the door this way, and I'm like, I gotta go. And I'm like, no, you know better than this. Don't do this. You know, it's not gonna do anything. And I like turn towards my car. And I'm like, no, I gotta tell her this is really important, you know? And I'm like, literally, like my body is like going this way, the door, the car, the door, the car. And then it was like, just because it's just knowing, and it didn't go, and I went into my car, and the whole thing was over, you know? But it's just like laughable. It's like a joke, like to think that she has the power over me, to think that something other than thought in the moment is causing my feelings, you know? So the more lost I am in illusion, the more I'm going to chase after the illusion to go ahead and solve myself. But if it's not a spouse problem, why am I going to look to her to solve myself, right? Why am I going to look in that direction to go ahead and tell her, once again, you know, why'd you invite people for Shabbos, yada, 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 or why didn't you get everything beforehand, you know? So it has nothing to do with her. Then I had an enjoyable car ride to the supermarket to get extra things, and gone, you know. But because we're receiving thought in the moment, from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment again, the possibilities are endless. You know, so I don't need to come back home after I did something nice and now ruin it by saying, I got you your stuff, you know. And by the way, you know what I was thinking the whole time, you know. Like, there's no need to go back there and try to uncover and try to fix and try to manipulate someone else to getting what you want, you know, because my experience doesn't have to do with her, you know. And it's just like, you know, again, like we've been saying, like the implications of this are like nothing needs to be fixed because nothing's broken, you know. It's not, she's not broken, I'm not broken, you know, so.
And we can handle being married to the devil sometimes.
Yeah, because you're not actually married to the devil. You're married to your thinking about your spouse. You're to thinking of the devil, you know?
Yeah, and it's not a problem. It's not a problem to handle that, right? Like, oh, today I'm married to the devil. Okay, let's see what this is like.
So when you get that feeling of upsetness, I have to run, is that from Hashem? It's from Hashem, yes? Every feeling, positive or negative. And then when you decide, I'm going, I'm not, that's the Bechira moment?
Well, I don't know how it all, works together with free will and everything, but I could say, like, your rational mind doesn't go out the window. Like, it seems that we have the ability to choose, and like I always learned growing up, like, you have to be yourself before you enter a relationship with somebody else, a simple idea, like, two independent people come together now to have a nice relationship, but if always learn that, it always seemed like a nice idea. Like, oh, that's a really good idea, how do I do that? Like, I want to be independent, but you don't really, you're living in misunderstanding, like your assumption, or in Hebrew we say your hanacha, your starting point is someone else can make me feel some way, right? Your starting point is, we live in an outside-in world. Your starting point is, for you, is that something, so if that's your starting point, well, being an independent person sounds like a nice idea, but how do you do it? But if your starting point is the other way, that you're receiving thought in the moment, and you have separate realities, that there are 8 billion people on earth, and 8 billion people are living in the feeling of their thinking in that moment. So it's a completely different conversation, right? It's a completely different way of understanding. It's a completely different way of squaring off the relationship. Now I could be an independent person, But until that point, until I understood the principles, it was just like, oh, that's a really good idea. Like, I want to do that. And then you get upset at yourself because you're not really doing that because you don't know how to do it, because your whole perception of understanding life is completely off. Your starting point for understanding the world around you is based on a false premise.
And that false premise just trips you up over and over and over
we go
again.
in and out.
You see, because it's an illusory paradigm that can never be true. But it bypasses our detector, and we buy it, because so many people in the world we live in buy this false paradigm because they haven't been offered a better one. So it's invisible to us. And we go in and out of assuming that different paradigms are true. And it's invisible to us. So we're all in the same boat. So when my husband loses it, right, then it's so much easier for me to see, oh, I do that, I lose it, and all of that, righteous indignation, it doesn't come. It's like, I don't have to fight it. And also the compassion that comes, one of the benefits that I've had of really learning about where my feelings come from is that, I think when I was younger and I was married, if my husband was upset at me, right, and was speaking to me in a way that I really didn't like, I would be like, I'm not listening. I'm not listening to someone who's speaking to me in that tone, right? And that would be the end of it, and I was so justified. Well, of course not, I'm not going to speak to someone who's speaking to me that way. And you know what one of the gifts is that if he happens to be upset, and I see the truth of separate realities, and that he's living the feeling of his thinking, which is independent of me, I can listen regardless of the feeling state he's in. I can listen to the anger. I'm not saying it doesn't affect me, Esther. I have compassion, right? I have compassion for him, right? But I can listen, and not only can I listen, there's usually a kernel of truth in what he's saying. And so I get the benefit of hearing through that. And that all comes from not buying into that, that falsehood, that, the false discriminator. Like what I was saying was you've got good ways to talk to me and bad ways to talk to me. You've got good ways to be in a feeling state around me and bad ways. And I'm only going to let you have one. And that must be so frustrating, to live in a relationship with someone that there's these rules that you can only be one way. And the wonderful byproduct is the likelihood of your behavior or your tone or how you speak to someone is that if you speak to them really inappropriately, that becomes much less likely when you have this writing mechanism, you know, this closed system where you kind of check back in with yourself, right? And also, you know, your tolerance for other people's stuff is so much greater that you're more of a resource to people, like in that moment. And my ability to stay connected with my husband when he's in a bad mood, that alone changed my relationship.
You understand, he's not in a good state of mind, and it can change.
Yeah, and I don't have to disconnect or you know, don't yell at me, and you know, you have to talk to me nicely if you want me to. You know, I don't have to. Like my ego is like not buying into this kind of shtick it wants to sell me. You know, like he's the cause. He's the cause. He's the cause. I'm not feeling my own thinking. And not only am I not feeling my own thinking, I'm right. People don't talk to me like that. You know? And then you know what happens is then you get this sort of feel for when you're inside out or you're outside in. You get like, what did Rabbi Tursky call it? Like a tug. It's like a tug, you know, that kind of just shows up and you go, wait a minute. Check back in with my diagnostic tool here. You know, where do I think this moment is coming from? And so the resilience, you know, that absolute writing mechanism, when we get off one way or another, it kicks back in so much quicker. And over time, it can get faster and faster and faster. And really cool thing is, even if you lose it for a long time,
That never happens.
You don't beat up yourself about it because it's illogical. It's completely illogical, and it makes no sense to then try to take responsibility for something that I just didn't see it. I was blind to it in that moment. And really, so treating myself better, you know, seeing my own separate realities, you know, within my own mind, it has an effect on everything around you. And that ability, that resilience that's built into the facts. You know, it's not something we learn and work on. It's built into the facts. It's in there. And that resilience is part of the design, because you see one moment and the next moment and the next moment and the next moment are being created in real time in a particular form, not chosen by me. And then my response to it, all right, that's my territory, you know? Have a lot of choices about that, you know, what I might do. But my response based on understanding will be completely different than my response based on misunderstanding. And that's where somewhere the free will comes in, because I don't get to pick my emotions. But I can kind of see what they're made out of, you know, which is going to affect my choices. Because my choices are kind of in my territory.
When I'm outside, then I have less choice.
You what?
I have less choice.
Less
Because-
choice? Okay.
Not like it. When I'm outside in and I'm not in the tool, I suffer more.
You suffer more, is that what
Yeah,
you're saying?
because I'm not in the.
I find that
It's
all the
till
time.
it clicks back. Till it
I'm just
calms
so
down.
When you're out, you're
Oh,
saying when you're outside in,
I'm
you
so
feel like
blinded.
you
Yes,
suffer
and the
more.
negative
Yeah.
feeling, yeah.
The two words that are coming to me as you were speaking, they're just like coming in pretty strongly, is humility and respect, you know? And we're all part of this larger, majestic picture of this world, you know? And everyone's got a different way of looking at it. Everyone's got a different way of thinking. Everyone's got their own system. It's a closed box. You know, we all live in separate realities. And knowing myself that you know, I'm part of this and I could get bent out of shape, I could get out of sort, I don't know, wake up feeling the way that I would prefer to feel, you know. It'd be great if I woke up every morning and I was like, all right, today's another day, you know, but it's like, oh great, I gotta get up again, oh, I gotta get the kids ready, oh, I gotta, you know. And just, there's a certain, you know, knowing that you know, I could only do as good as I could do, giving my thinking in the moment, you know, and knowing that my wife, my kids, and there's a certain humility and respect that's born out of that. You know, there's a certain respect for knowing that, like, it's not up to me. You know, I can't make myself feel good anytime that I want to. I can't just manufacture feelings like that. It doesn't work like that, you know? So because that there's this certain humility that, you know, it gives respect as well. You know, it gives respect for your spouse. Like, what made me think of this is, as you were saying, like if my spouse is upset, so again, I used to be drawn after that, like, take it so personally, you know, like, it's got nothing to do with me. Nothing, you know? So now I could be there and I could be present. And I don't have to go ahead and say, well, you know, you can't talk to me like that. Or, you know, why don't you just cool off first? Or, you know, or like, you know, I don't want to listen to this now, you know? So there's a certain respect that you get because it depersonalizes. You know, it's not so personal. I can't manufacture my feelings, she can't manufacture her feelings, you know? And it's supposed to be like that. You know, denying that would be living against, you know, be swimming upstream. You know, when you're in line with the system. It's like I heard Rudy once say. He said this. He said there a metaphor. He said that there was a person robbing a bank, and he said, "This is a stick-up," and he went to rob the bank, and the lady behind the teller hits the button, and the windows shut, and everything. He's like, "Oh man, I'm gonna get busted." So he runs to the door, and what does he do? He pushes the door, and he says, "Oh, it's blocked." So he's a sitting duck, and he's waiting there to get arrested. Meanwhile, as the alarms are sounding, there's an old lady who comes from the outside, and from her, she pushes the door, and she walks right in. And the guy says, "Oh, I was supposed to pull the door." You know, the door really wasn't locked. Which means, like, the system only works one way, you know, and knowing that, you know, instead of pushing the door, why isn't she changing? Why isn't she making me feel a certain way? You know, so you have more respect now. You have more respect for the system, for the fragility of life, for how we're actually worked. So you're in line with that, and the benefits of that, you know, the byproduct of that are obviously innumerable.
And you see, that was great. You were talking about humility and respect. So when we look at these from outside of the way the system works, we say, wow, that sounds like a good idea. I want humility, right? Or we say, wow, I want to be able to have that respect for somebody. And they look like good ideas. But when we're inside this unavoidable paradigm, then respect and humility are unavoidable. Because they're built into the facts. They don't take anything but the logic and the truth of it. And then there's nothing to not be humble about in that moment. There's nothing to not respect in that moment. And so all of these things, you know, we go around the world and we're not stupid. We hear something like, respect. Yeah, that's the key to a good marriage.
How do I do that?
How do I do that? Or, you know, fill in the blank. I'm sure we could sit here and come up with hundreds of good ideas. But what if that is already built into the fact? You know, what if that's already built into this law of gravity that we live in, this absolute law of gravity? It's unavoidable. And that's really nice, that it's not something we have to learn to do, and we have to work really hard on, and we have to, you know, there's so many concepts like that. It's like, I love to deconstruct these concepts when I teach my classes. Sometimes self-esteem, you know, everybody goes, yeah, the problem is I have low self-esteem. It's like one of the buzzwords. Look, there's hundreds of books on that's the source of the problem. How do you raise kids with self-esteem? And, you know, and I started thinking about that. I was like, yeah, that sounds good. It sounds good that you should kind of feel a little bit good about yourself, feel a little bit confident. When you look at it, it's like, so wait a minute. I get really nice thinking about myself sometimes and feel good. And sometimes I feel like I'm the worst person that ever lived. So how does that work? You know, how does that mean I have good self-esteem or bad self-esteem? Because I'm having both experiences.
Definitely
Who am
bipolar.
I?
Oh, I'm bipolar. Right? I'm psychotic, or I wouldn't be having these
Schizophrenic.
dual
It's like he
realities
said,
that I'm living in.
Who am I really?
What?
He said yesterday, practically, who am I really?
Who am I? Oh, you said, who am I really, right?
So who am I really?
Who am I really?
Yes,
That's what you're
yes.
saying. So, and then I realized, like, well,
We are thinking.
when you really see how it works, what is there to esteem or not esteem? You know, I'm just part of a bigger system in this form, in this moment. In the next moment, I'll be in another form. And the next moment, I'll be in another form. And that's really nice, that for 120 years, hopefully, that we're all going to be alive, like we're never going to be bored. It's just one form after another, after another, after another. And it's going to encompass every experience on the planet that was ever invented. I mean, that's a really nice virtual reality that some master creator set up for us, you know, to live in. And so the implications for this is relationships. It's just, it deflates all the pressure and brings back in all that joy, which is the byproduct of really just seeing how it works. And knowing I'm never going to see that all the time. Never.
It's like so exciting.
The-
Exciting to be part
The
of it.
cutest part of it.
That-
And also the most freeing.
Okay,
the most
wait a minute.
freeing.
It's
I find
most
that part the most
so
because
But
I
I
find,
find, yeah, I'm sorry, yeah.
I find that part is, first of all, it frees me like crazy. Like, it's not me, who cares? And whatever it is, good or bad, it's just wonderful because it still works and it's there. And whenever I wake up, boom, I can always find it again. And it's inside me and I have nothing to do. That's
Yeah, I have nothing to
nothing to do.
to try to work this machinery that I wasn't working in the first
free,
place.
and I'm free to experience
Right?
whatever it is because it can't be.
Because we got plenty to do. But that's not the place to be doing it. That's not the place to be busy doing stuff.
It's like, if you don't know what's possible, like you're only going to shoot so far. You know, like, it's like an example, like if and this is just an example I was thinking, like if I think a person's messed up, right, I'm going to treat them, act them, talk to them, think about them like they're messed up, right? If I think someone is healthy, so that's awesome. It's good, you know, if you see they're part of a larger picture, they have their own system, they have their own, you know, reality coming to experience. So there's something about that is helpful, but so many times, like I see, like, not that there's a real bar, you know, but just to talk about, you know, it's like the level is like the level of understanding is so low, you know, so it's like you're only gonna shoot for so high, you're only gonna try to earn so much, you're only, you know, so it's like, but the potential is like raised beyond, you know, that's what I was saying before, like in one of the ways that this has helped me the most is a relationship, it raises everything. It's like what could be accomplished is a tremendous amount, more than I'm aware of, for sure.
And as Sid Big said, is that, you know, not being afraid of our experiences, it's going to change the world. It's good. It's unavoidable that it will change the world. And it's unavoidable that relationships will self-correct in real time and be able to endure almost anything. Yes, Ahuba.
So seeing someone who's healthy, like kind of like when you illustrated by, let's say, Dr. Bettinger when he's talking about children he works with, or anybody, like, if let's say they have a lot of habits formed by their misunderstanding, you're saying that your eyes are on their health, like you're gonna ignore the stuff, like since we all get caught up, you're saying by seeing someone is healthy, you're gonna just, as much as, your understanding allows, you're gonna just ignore, the stuff.
Oh,
You're gonna
so
just
if it was
disregard
saying
it.
like, if you see somebody who like looks really messed up, are you gonna ignore
The messy stuff.
the messed up stuff and just see what's healthy about them? Is that the right question?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. We know the amazing thing about this singular logic about how we work is it kind of sorts all that stuff out for us. So if I know for a fact that there's no one whose system is not working perfect, because the creator of it knew what he was doing. So there aren't any faulty products running around down here. Like, they're all working. This machinery is all working for everybody.
No free returns.
No free returns, right? And so that person is experiencing the feeling of their own thinking moment to moment to moment. And that happens to be the form that it's showing up in, whatever the form is. Now, when I am clear on that, I will sort out what to attend to, what to let go, what to ignore, what to address, what to go in there and put an absolute stop to. You see, all of those calculations come out of seeing it exactly the way it works.
Means like there are no rules, There's like I was saying yesterday during the parenting class, like I have a kid of mine that my 4-year-old, every time he says something, he does the opposite. He has a nice defiant spirit, So what I realized is, and at first I was getting like in battle with him a little bit, like, because every time I'm saying something, he's breaking the rule that I said or whatever it is. Then I realized, wait a minute, like just checking in with myself, seeing that like my experience is coming from thought in the moment, like it allowed me to, like knowing the truth of that allowed me to check in with myself. And then it came to me that like I need to give this kid less rules, because if I'm going to give him so many rules, he's going to have so many opportunities to break. And then my older daughter, my 11-year-old said to me, Abba, he's going to grow up and learn that you don't have to, how come, you're letting him get away with those sorts of things. So I said to her, it was just a good moment, I said to her, her name is Bina, so I said, well, Bina, he doesn't listen to anything that I say, so if I'm going to tell him to do things all the time, he's going to be breaking the rules a lot, so it's better I don't tell him so many things to do, and I just look the other way. And with another kid, or even that same kid, maybe in a different, and she's like, oh, it makes sense, Abba, that's what she said to me, But with another kid, so I might need to be stronger, or that same kid in a different area, I might need to be, more firm, or more, whatever it is. But just knowing that there's this freedom, that it's not like you have to be strict, or you should just ignore, even if you're looking at, it's not like that. It's like life's dynamic, people are dynamic, nuanced, and there's these subtleties, and you could be aware of that, and you take the rule book out, throw it out the window. My kids should be, and someone told me once, they took a parenting class, and the parenting class said, when you say no, you're never allowed to change your mind. And after three no's, they got it, didn't take that one. After 3 no's, you have to, wash your kid's mouth out, whatever it is.
Oh.
So the father called me up and said, Shaya, I feel terrible about what I did. So I said, what'd you do? He told me the whole thing, taking this parenting class, this new parenting modality, someone else's thought on your mind, right? So, and he says, we washed our kids' mouth out with soap because he was being very disrespectful. And he goes, I feel terrible. My kid's not going to learn a single lesson from what we did. He's just going to remember we were angry and we washed his mouth out with soap. That's what he's going to accomplish. It's like you take someone else's ideas and put them on your mind. It's like a brain transplant. You're sent the wisdom, you get your thought in the moment thing. Now you're taking someone else's thought in the moment thing. Like, you're given, that soul was born to you. And when that soul came into this world, you were given the ability to raise that. But you look for outside in circumstances. You're looking for someone else's advice, outside in things in order for your children. So messes with the system a little bit, you know, it's still working fine, but like you get caught in that, transplanting other ideas on other people's things on your own, and like you completely devalue yourself.
And you know, it's great, you were talking about how dynamic it is, yes. Everything is moment to moment to moment. So it's way too complex for man-made rules. It's way too much stuff happening every moment out here in the real world, right? For man-made rules. But there's these God-created systems, you know, that are going to generate fresh, new, updated data, the latest app, exactly what I need in this moment. And that we're all part of that energy. And that, you know, Shaya and his little 4-year-old are of the same source, of the same thing, you know, working in tandem together. They're created by the same creator moment to moment to moment in this unbelievably dynamic system that's going, he's never going to know, you know. And now he's free. Now he's free to be present in the relationship because he didn't read too many parenting books. Or you probably did.
No, I argued on a lot of them, actually.
You argued on a lot of them, right? Yes.
But it's just so interesting, yeah, that yesterday it just came to me, and now I'm seeing it again, that there's this duality that's going on, that on the one hand, we're all from the same, on the one hand, we're all the same in this way, and on the other hand, like you were explaining how, we were both explaining how we each have our own realities, so that's just so mind-boggling for me, how they both work together beautifully.
Yes, yes, they work in tandem, you know. When I'm working in tandem with how the system created, then I'm working in tandem with everything else that this divine energy behind life is creating. And if I have a few of those moments in the course of a lifetime, that'd feel really nice.
Can you expand a little bit on last time I was...
Time. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, last time I was in your class, you were explaining that being that we're all made up of the same stuff and we're all part of a whole and we have responsibility one to another, and really struck me.
That we're all part of the same whole, we're all made up of the same energy,
so therefore
the same
we're
stuff.
responsible because we're all one.
Yeah, we all affect everything affects everything else. Yeah, yeah. Isn't it funny? Doesn't it sound like a paradox? Like we're saying, like we're all this self-enclosed system, but yet we all affect each other.
I can understand it because I can see the wholeness of it, so it makes sense.
But that's it. You can see the wholeness of it because the energy behind it all is all completely
and he can
being created moment to moment.
And him is normal.
Yeah.
My turn to like since understanding this, I'm less threatened by my husband outside in. I used to be more threatened by him needing to be on time, and I struggle with that. And now, I know that might be outside in for him, but I'm more compassionate. I try harder to be on time for him because I know that it irks him. And so it's like right? Like it's kind of...
That's such a nice way you put that, Ahuva, that, you know, one of the benefits of seeing this is she's less threatened by her husband's outside in. You know, it's not a threat. It's not a cause for alarm. And also, you know, because I don't have to live by all my little preferences that I make up, I can tune into other people's little preferences and like indulge them, you know, very freely. And that's got a nice feel in a relationship when it's like, oh, let me indulge you in your little preferences when it works for me, you know? It's very energetic. It's very energetic. Yeah. Okay, so this is my favorite breakout next. It's called lunch. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much.